given name is Tamika.
So
Uh,
then what does Ifashina mean?
Ifashina is a name I received from an elder during a ritual initiation about 3, 4 years ago. And it is Yoruba, and
Mm.
it translates to Ifa, brings forth power and force through blessings. So, uh, yeah, it's a name that a lot of your like Nigerian folks know. But yeah, it's a spiritual for me, so that's why I use
Oh,
it.
that's beautiful. Well, I have a lot of questions about what embodiment work really is. So,
Okay.
can we start there and how you discovered it and
Yes,
whether or not this is something you felt was right for you right away, or what was that transition like?
that's such a good question. There's lots of practitioners and schools of thought around embodiment, and I've seen an upsurge in the last like 2 years or so of like language around it, right? But embodiment is something that I've been saying from a particular standpoint for me, probably since about 2012, just as somebody who realized that like I was doing the thing that a lot of fat Black femmes do or are kind of encouraged to do, which is like perform your confidence, perform your goodness. And I realized that like I wasn't really in my body. I was kind of walking around like that. And I remember saying to people, like, the same way you wearing that shirt is how I would wear my body. I just wasn't
Mm.
really in it. And so I started intentionally being like, I have a stomach. It's right here. And really getting inside of my body. Um, my intellect, my personality were things I was very comfortable projecting out to the world, but it always felt like in spite of this body. And so it's in 2012 started like a real intentional trajectory around like get in it. This is my body. I live here. Like what is it like up
Yeah.
in here? And that is how I have and how I teach and move around embodiment. But again, you will find many practitioners that are talking about a very similar concept, and they're talking about it in the form of like trauma, leadership development, truth telling. There's those other kind of intersections around embodied leadership, embodied, wellness, like that kind of, if that makes sense. That a lot of the people, even some of my own teachers that I now work with, that's where they're coming from.
Okay. So this is kind of a new concept to me. So I've started to hear it a lot more from people who are working in healing
Yeah,
in different parts of the country.
yeah.
So I'm way down here in the South, so we get news last.
What part of the South?
I'm in Georgia. I'm like
Okay,
maybe an hour outside of Atlanta, but I'm originally from the coast, so way, 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 way at the bottom of the state.
I see.
So we didn't get a lot of news down there. So I wanted to know, as far as using it as a healing tool,
Hmm.
how did you find the entry point for that? Because it sounds like this journey you started on your own
Yes,
and did it intuitively.
yes,
So how
exactly.
did you learn to use it as a tool for healing?
Um, it's again intuitively, and with the kind of other stuff that I was doing, right? So I have several healers in my life, including the sister that named me, Ifashina. I practice an African tradition, Ifa, and so that some of that work that started back in 2011. And then I have kind of like, I call her like my rogue witch. Like if you are a mystic and a rogue and you just kind of out here, intuitively, to your point, getting your medicine and getting your life. So the sister who actually lives in Georgia taught me, this is the person that taught me what chakras were, what chakras are, about auras. So about this person started talking to me about the body as a spiritual force, right? And as a spiritual home. And she is my Reiki teacher. So I'm Reiki master level initiated. And this person, we started that work, like I said, probably sometime in like 2011. And again, I've always been somebody that's like, I can't be doing something that I'm not, I can't be teaching people something that I'm not teaching
Mm-hmm.
myself. This is why I identify more as a mystic and an alchemist than anything, because I'm usually medicine that I'm giving is some medicine I took myself first. You
Mm.
understand? And so I have played around with the concept of embodiment before I found training in it, for years. And the first training that I actually ever went to around embodiment, coincidentally, is through BOLD. BOLD stands for Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity. And
Mm.
it's an organization and an institute out of Florida that does embodiment leadership training for organizers, for Black organizers specifically. And they use a generative somatics framework. And so somatics work, again, these are all buzzwords that I'm saying a lot now, but they're new to me too. I really appreciate you lifting up the intuitive nature of how I came to this, because sometimes it really do be like that. You doing you, and then you look up and it's like, oh, people been doing this for centuries, and you just kind of
Mm. Yeah,
figuring,
you just got the news.
yeah, yeah,
But that's so interesting. So the person who is a Reiki master, who's
yes,
one of your teachers, do
yes,
they also have a connection to traditional African religions?
no,
You've brought that together.
yes, I have done that. I have brought, and many practitioners of Ifa do Tai Chi, do Aikido, do bring in other forms of Eastern medicine, because Ifa is an Eastern practice. It is an Eastern practice of enlightenment and being one with the world and the universe, right? And so all those things, they tend to go together.
I
Um,
haven't heard of Ifa before. So that's not a traditional African religion, or is it?
People call it an African traditional religion. I lean more towards it being a tradition than a religion,
Oh,
similar to
okay.
Buddhism. Like that's how I see Ifa. Like it's a practice and a tradition. And when you are on the continent, they practice it more like this is just our culture. This is just,
Right.
whereas the way, Western thoughts around religion is like a church, a book,
A place you
a,
go,
a
like it
dogma.
doesn't affect your, yeah, dogma, not necessarily something that affects every
Everybody.
day.
That's right. That's right.
So, have you found anything? Well, what part of the continent does it come from? Do you know?
So Ifa is historically kind of given like credit for coming from Nigeria, right?
Okay, so this legitimately could be something your ancestors practiced because it's on the West
Absolutely.
Coast.
But the
Oh,
way we practice it here and the way it's practiced all over the world is about it being mixed with the indigenous people of the land and the colonizer, mixed with the African people. So you've heard of Condomble or
mm-hmm.
Santeria. That's because of where the slave ships landed, right? So Condomble, Santeria is about the parts of Central America, and then the indigenous people and the African people and the colonizer are all coming together. That's what it looks like there. Whereas in the
Oh,
North America, here in the United States, we call it Ifa, and it looks on some level like what they might practice in Nigeria, but it ain't what they practice in Nigeria. Like theirs is very different than how we do it here.
gotcha. Oh, well, that's really neat though, because it is interesting to see how the diaspora connects
Yes.
because it could be a cousin, it could be an uncle that got dropped
Yeah,
at one port and then the rest of the family got dropped at another port.
that's
So it
right.
makes sense to have shared traditions, but then to accept that naturally it evolves
Yeah.
because we are not what our ancestors were, because now we're blended with the colonizer and with the indigenous people. That makes
and,
a lot of
and
sense.
the fact of having to hide it. So I am a firm believer that the reason that the Black church is the way it is because it's some Ifa in there, it's some Congo in there, it's some, like, you know what I mean. I really believe
Yeah.
that our folks hid our traditions in the Black church experience. That's my conspiracy kind of.
Well, did you have a positive experience with the Black church growing up?
I grew up Muslim. My
Oh,
father,
that's
my
different.
father practiced Islam, and so I did have a positive experience in that. The other people in my family, grandmothers and stuff like that, they practiced Christianity, and I went to church with them. But my primary practice and religious belief from about age 10 to 17 was Islam. So I have I have a loving, respectful relationship with both Black Christianity and the church, even as a queer person, and with Islam. They're foundational practices for me. But I'm mostly practice Ifa now, kind of in.
Oh, okay. But you really haven't completely, you didn't feel the need to turn away from Islam. There is room for queerness.
Oh, absolutely. There's room for queerness, and because again, for me, I'm again primarily a mystic and an alchemist. So I'm gonna come into anything, and I'm gonna purify and pull out the impurities. You feel me?
Mm.
And make it what I need. I'm my relationship and connection is to the divine, and so I can see the divine in anything. And at 10 years old, this was the rule. This was my father practiced Islam. His family had to practice. I found divinity in it. Once I became kind of like, my own consciousness and making decisions for myself at around 17, I discovered conviction. I didn't really know what that was until about 17. And I felt it in a Christian church. And so I converted and I stayed in Christianity for many years, many, many years, from about 17 to, like I said, 2011. I think I was about 27, 28. And then that's when I started asking this question, what did my ancestors practice before they were colonized? And really feel like I have found some semblance of a reconnect to that, which is 9 out of 10, some sort of ATR, you know what I mean?
Right.
Earth-based, what many of us call earth-based practice, some sort of practice around their enlightenment and their connection to their ancestors and to the earth and to the divine. And Ifa is what has stuck and has stayed with me. And I got initiated in 2017 to be a priest. So I'm a priest in training right now.
Oh, wow. And sometimes it can be hard to step into your own when your parents maybe were hoping you were going to be more like a mini them and have exactly the same beliefs and everything. Was that difficult to explain that you were feeling called to convert to another religion?
No, because my father knew he had deviated from Christianity, right? So
Oh,
was
okay.
cool. And my mother is a Christian heretic. She might not call herself that, but I do. My mom is very like, she thinks that people use the Bible out of context. She she have a lot of critiques around the way people deal with charity, in the church. So there's still a belief in Jesus, but she's often very critical of the way that she feels like Christians behave. And so the stuff that I say to her, I think if I was doing stuff that she was like, you hurting people or you doing something, but because of the way that this tradition has impacted me, she just accepts it. She's like, you seem like a lovely human being doing whatever you're doing. So, they're cool. They're both cool.
Oh, that's so nice to have that level of freedom. Now, when it comes to the initiation, it seems for me, it feels intimidating, these traditional African religions, but I love the concept of being able to connect with something that was created with your ancestors in mind
That's right.
instead of other religions that come from the colonizer. I always have concerns that maybe because they were initiated to keep people like me in place, maybe not just for us, but because that is there in the history, I wonder how much it can serve me for my spiritual evolution.
Yes.
How do you get started trying to connect to traditions that, maybe you've lost a connection to, especially if you don't have the language in common with the Holy Scriptures? Or actually, I don't know, are these faiths that have traditional texts, or it's more you understand the religion through hearing it from an elder?
The way that my practice and the community that I'm in practices is there's a mix. There are some texts that have been recorded over years from elders that have been initiated and been practicing for many years, and there is a strong um, invocation, incantation aspect to it, and oral tradition to it, and that's why I compare it to Buddhism or even Tai Chi more than I do Christianity or Islam, right? Like it's just not like a traditional Abrahamic religion. Um, you do this tradition in community. You know, you
Mm.
do it with elders. You do it with people that you're gonna be an apprentice or some sort of student of. You are bowing to a master, and you are bowing to mastery, right? Of self mastery, and mastery of being in relationship with the world around you. And so, yeah, you got to find teachers and somebody that you're going to feel that way about, right? Somebody that you feel like you'll be willing to bow to. And that's difficult to find, you know? It's the way we move around churches sometimes because we need to feel more in alignment with the pastor. It's a very similar thing. It just has an intimacy, in my opinion. It has an intimacy that is similar to like an Aikido instructor, right?
Mm.
Someone that you're going to be working with and that's going to help you figure out your form, your path, your gifts, your medicine in the world. And so it's very intimate and very individualized, even though there are traditions that are older than, Christianity, for lack of a better way to put it.
Oh, that's really interesting. And because colonization interrupted community for
Uh-huh.
people of color,
Yep.
that's something that a lot of us have a lot of trauma around.
Right.
The idea of being in community together, it's a tough one.
Yes, it
So
is.
you didn't really have any of that to work through?
Oh, child, please, yes, and still working through it. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I have a lot of elders, though. I talked to you about two just at the beginning of this conversation, and I have elders from different practices, different schools of thought. And eldership is something that I care a lot about and that I find a lot of value in. And so even when I think about the practice of embodiment, right, like for me, that is a lot of what this tradition is about. There's a term called iwapwele, and it is the belief of walking in full, upright, balanced character, right? It's not something that you just say somebody had. Like you can say you a Christian, but you can't say you got iwapwele. Like, you know what I mean? You can say you're a devotee of this tradition, but it don't mean you got iwapwele. Like, you are really striving to get there. There's work that you're trying to do. And so when I think about that in relationship to elders, like I had to let go of perfectionism, trying to see my elders as perfect, trying to see them as not human. These are not gods inside of people. These are people having a human experience right along with me. And I had to take a lot more responsibility for my own experience and my own salvation, because we talk about salvation just as Christians, but that's, to me, that word doesn't have a religious context to it. It's that inner piece of us that's like trying to get in touch with something that's bigger than us and that is trying to do right here in the world. And so that's, again, this is something that I recognize as I began to lean into embodiment. I was like, I don't feel good as a disembodied person. I feel separated from myself, a key place of myself, which is my home, my vessel. And so that has been a huge part of Iwapele for me, of getting into right and balanced character. Is like, this body right here, just like this, am I in it? And do I have a good relationship with it? I mean, that has been, and I'm connecting the concepts because they connect for me. That if I can have this kind of an image and a relationship with myself, then I can look at someone that I'm calling an elder or a master, right, and actually bow. Like I can, because I'm looking at that person with their humanity intact, with their flaws intact. And I know that they are just a teacher and a vessel. They are not the path to the divine. And I don't do that to them or me.
Oh, that's deep. Because I know sometimes if you're thinking about the Holy Spirit in a more like Judeo-Christian context,
Yeah.
you think that's going to make people who are leaders in the church at least appear perfect.
Yeah.
They're in service to the congregation or whatever.
Yeah.
So people easily are stumbled by any evidence of humanity and they're like, I'm out of here and on to the next place, right?
Yeah.
So, that's really interesting. And when it comes to your relationship with your body, I never thought about that being a key to spiritual evolution. So, to you, what does having a good relationship with your body enable you to do in life?
Mhm.
And what's impossible to achieve if you cannot accept or be in relationship with your body?
Man, I love this question, because being in relationship with my body has made me, like, has allowed me to have space for my own miraculousness.
Mm.
Like, the body is miraculous, straight up. It's doing all kind of stuff right now while me and you talking that we are not instructing. That we don't have no power or control over, and we don't have no say. You know what I mean? If your heart is beating, it's beating, and it is grace that it's beating. That's, you know what I mean? And that's something that I really hold true to. And so, again, in a lot of traditions and a lot of practices and schools of thought and stuff, we're taught to look outside for those kinds of concepts. But we've been gifted with this miraculous vessel that is such a lesson in that. You know what I mean? And so, being able to be in touch with my own miraculousness has helped me be like, oh, I am precious. I am worthy. I'm divine. I'm connected to something larger than me. I'm not in control. Do you see what I'm saying? And
Right.
all of that is helping me get into align with something like humility, which is not the same as humiliation, right? Which is not the same as being submissive. It's like it's aligned. There's an alignment. And so the more that I practice being with this body the way it is, you know what I mean? I'm in touch with that in a way that I feel like is really, really important. And this is part of the reason why in my practice, the whole get embodied soul dance experience and the work that I'm doing, it centers fat, disabled, and Black people. That these bodies by themselves, right? Fat bodies, Black bodies, disabled bodies. These are bodies that is very easy to, and not even just easy, like our culture promotes and lifts up deficit, right? Around these three different bodies: a fat body, a Black body, a disabled body. And so the messages that we're constantly getting is fix it,
Mm.
fix it, fix it, get well, get better, get slim, get white. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was gonna say, how does one fix a Black body?
How,
But
they saying get it whiter, get
yeah,
it
actually, mm,
to look whiter, shape it to, you know what I mean? And
yeah, straighten your hair,
come
bleach
on,
your skin.
slim it. And when I say shape, I really mean Black bodies come in beautiful, various shapes. But the narrative is usually the way that our Black bodies naturally are. There's something about it. Think about slavery and the way that they, that time period, the way that they paraded Black bodies around. They literally saw our bodies as cattle. They treated us like cattle and saw us as merchandise. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
figure, whatever. And that has seeped down over generations. And
And
so,
deliberately created divisions or a perception of division
yes,
in
yes,
between body types among races, which technically don't even exist. It's
don't
just
even
a social
exist.
construct. But you really do have this stereotype of, oh, a Black body is going to have curves in these places and extra fat in these places. And
Right. And if it don't,
yeah.
there's something wrong with it, right? It's
Mm.
not Black. It's a
Oh,
problem,
yeah, that's
you know?
funny. Yeah, because when I was growing up, early puberty, I was skinny as a rail, and all I ever heard about was how, like, what happened to your butt? Where'd you
Yep,
leave it? Oh,
yep.
you're not really butt because you don't have enough of a butt. And yeah, there was like a lot of I don't want to call it bullying because it didn't really hurt my feelings, but it was like a broken record that apparently my body was not Black enough. Even though
Yes,
I feel like I am Black, everything I do is Black, everything my body does is Black. I don't need to do anything
that
special.
that part. So, like, sometimes I feel like I'm preaching, but I am, because I think, and I don't mean to preach in a negative connotation, but just really these messages about these three different bodies specifically come from a similar source, come from the same place, right? Which is like a particular kind of, white supremacist notion of good,
Hmm.
normal, you know, and so we don't have the same notion of well that other people do. And so for me, when it comes to the practice around embodiment, very specifically being with this body, I'm like, yeah, I get to be well in this body, in this fat body, in this disabled body, in this Black body. And especially if my body has all three of those intersections. If I'm a fat, Black, disabled person, I get to be well. Where sometimes we talk about those things as strikes against us. And I'm like, they're not strikes. There is no strikes. Again, these bodies are miraculous. They're doing some miraculous, wonderful, amazing things. So I actually get to be in relationship with my body from that belief. So that's why for me, the goal and the practice that I've created, rooted, to be quite honest, in African tradition. So the dance moves and the philosophy that I come from in my practice is rooted in Black dance, Black social dance, and Afrobeat movements. Some of the other stuff that I was talking to you about, Ifa, Reiki, all these things that I'm like, there is 1 million schools of thought that say our bodies do some miraculous things, but ain't nobody talking specifically to Black bodies, specifically to disabled bodies, and specifically to fat bodies, and saying your wellness for you actually isn't fix it. That ain't wellness. Wellness for you is love it, enjoy it, honor its yes, honor its limitations. Imagine that. Imagine honoring your body's limitations and that being a relationship with it that is loving. Because think about what we do with a little kid. If a little kid can't do something, we don't go, you stupid idiot.
Right.
You big dumb. We go, honey, you just can't. You're not tall enough. Imagine, honey, your arm isn't long enough. And we just like, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. We need to do the same thing with our bodies, regardless as to how old we get. Your body don't do that, and that's okay. You still get to enjoy it. You still get to enjoy your body. You still get to be one with your body. And so instead of putting on things like fitness, right, and putting on things like weight loss, or even putting on things like heal, because heal is a complicated thing when you're disabled or when you're sick. It's a complicated thing. People try to act like, you should want to not be disabled. And I just don't believe that. I don't believe that there is a goal for someone who is fat, disabled, or Black, that they're supposed to be trying to not be those things. I think
especially when some things they cannot, it just is.
Right.
And it needs to be neutral. And there you go. Yeah. Because when it cannot be changed, the problem is not the body. The problem is how the surrounding environment is interacting with or not working with that body.
Yes.
So it does no good to focus on trying to change the body because it just is. But we could, have better access for people who can't stand for long periods.
Yes.
Or who are not visibly disabled but can't stand for long periods. People don't want to give anything to people who are not visibly disabled.
And those systems are running everything. They're running the way we see jobs. They're running the way we see education. They're running the way we see healthcare. That, again, this is why I feel like a practice, something that somebody can come back to all the time, that is really rooted in, this body is precious. This body is holy, is sacred. I have fun with it. I enjoy it. To me, it feels necessary, to have a practice like that when you're living in these conditions. That's really how I feel. I created this practice with that in mind. The conditions that we're living in require that we have something specifically for us so that we can live in these conditions in this circumstance.
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. It's so interesting. I was just talking about this a couple of days ago on another show when people say, oh, well, why do you have these resources that specifically target, these marginalized groups? It's because it's necessary for survival.
Yes.
It isn't exclusionary. It's people thinking about the survival of the communities they belong to and their own survival.
Yep.
If no one else is going to create it, who better than a member of that community to create it. And it is so interesting. You see all these resources around that don't speak to certain people.
Yeah.
And that was one of my things with this podcast as a dietitian. I don't really see anyone creating self-care tools for queer folks and people of color.
Yes.
And heaven forbid if you're both of those things at the same time.
Yes.
Well, then you can't have nothing, apparently.
Right.
Except
Except for what
fast.
brilliant people like you say you deserve. I see your preciousness. I see your miraculousness. I'm going to create something, some space, some corner for you to have access to something that says and affirms how wonderful and amazing you are. And
Yeah.
that's where Get Embodied came from. Like for me, like wanting to make sure that people have that space and that they have a practice, that they have something. Because again, when I think about the way that yoga was created, or even Tai Chi, I was like, there's gotta be a practice that like Black folks have access to. And so again, I'm like, oh, it's dance.
Mm.
It's like Black folks, we traditionally on the continent and also on this particular continent, we dance when we're happy. We dance to celebrate. We dance to celebrate life. We dance when there's war. We dance for spiritual reasons. Like movement is something that we do to communicate and be in relationship with each other. So that's the other reason that I used and created this particular practice, because I'm like, it's Black.
Yeah, it is. And you said it has like, did you say partner dancing or what?
So the moves, so there's two things. I use social dance,
That's
and then
what you said.
yeah,
So what
so
is social dance?
like the electric slide,
Oh, okay. Okay.
line dances, or even the do the nay nay and all that. These dances that if you say it, everybody knows what it is, and we do it. And mostly the line dancing in my space, and then the Afrobeat, which is a mix for me. Afrobeat is a mix of like a lot of like traditional African moves, but like kind of in a contemporary form. So, Afrobeat moves are something that you see a lot of younger Africans all across the continent doing, but that you also see young Black African Americans and descendants of enslaved Africans here doing. And so what I've done is taken those moves and assign meaning to them so that someone can have a practice, right? So I have a move that I call Easy Runner, and it's an Afrobeat dance. And it's the dance that you see a lot of Afrobeat people do where they look like they're running, and they just kind of like, hey, 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 right? And so what we do in my dance class when we're practicing it is channel all of that kind of same energy that you might do if you were running around a track. Right? So we're dancing, but it's like, because the body doesn't know any difference. Like the body doesn't know you're not on a track. If you start activating your heart, your breathing, even your mind, and you go, I'm running. Your body goes, we running. Okay. Right? It's miraculous. And so the same feeling, now of course it's not the same feeling, as actual running, but comes very, very close. Right? And so what I tend to feel in my body when I'm doing that dance move is elevated heart rate, elevated breathing, and I sweat. Right? And so, but I also am happy because I'm dancing. There's a song on I Feel Cute. I'm looking at you, smiling at me, and we are doing it together. And it's this whole other beautiful experience. I'm not now moving, dreading drudgery of running. I'm not now moving as a fat person worried about my joints. I'm not a disabled person sitting in a wheelchair and can't run because everybody else is running. We're all sitting in this space together, having this joyous, collective experience of movement. And we're all aware of our bodies right now. And so that's the practice. It's like doing it together, doing moves that feel fun, and letting the fun and the joy be the goal instead of some of the other stuff that we're told.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that makes so much more sense. It's so clear that that is a health promoting behavior, but there's so many other practices that people will engage in an attempt to shrink their fat body,
Yeah.
in an attempt to correct their spoony body, and it actually tears the body down
Yes.
because of how flooded your body is with stress hormones when you do it. Are you tearing up your joints? Is it sustainable? And does it bring you any kind of joy? Or is it something you go and do all alone? And then you come back home to eat a rice cake all alone?
Yeah.
Like, is that really health promoting? We're communal people.
And it ain't sustainable. Like, if I don't, pleasure is such beautiful medicine. Like, it
Mm.
really is. I know all medicine don't taste good, but pleasure is one of them that do. And
Yes.
so it's like that's more sustainable if you enjoy it. And there's nothing hidden in this for me. I'm not hiding fitness inside of what I'm doing. I'm not hiding health inside of what I'm doing. I am saying very directly, fat, Black, and disabled people live in conditions that are not conducive to our wellness. This is a practice to support that. Support us so we can. Like,
Oh,
that's
that's
it.
beautiful.
That's all we're doing. Yeah.
So, is this something? Tell me about your projects and how you're sharing this with other people. Is this something you also are doing remotely, especially now, or is
Yeah.
this something you do more in person?
So I do both, usually. Usually there's a class here. I'm in the Bay Area right now. And so there's a class first and third Saturdays for 90 minutes. And we have a whole kind of, I think cycle. It starts one way and it starts the same way and ends the same way. We do it in person. But during COVID, during shelter in place starting in March, I started doing it online only. And I've done online before. And so it's still first and third Saturdays most months. I'm off this month because I have a transition coming up in my life. So I'm off for September. But I am doing a really special event on September 26th called Sustaining Black Lives and Embodied Wellness Retreat. And so I did a series back in July where we met every Monday. And it's an opportunity for folks to come together in community, and create this container for us
Mm.
to be sustained together. So we're doing community care by being in space with each other and really doing deep listening and sharing and affirmations. We write and we move. And we use concepts like ease, play, ancestral relationship, and a relationship to tradition and eldership. So those four kind of components coming together. And on the 26th, it'll be in a retreat. So it'll be from 11 to 2. And we'll have a little 30-minute break where folks can go eat, but we'll just be spending the day with each other, really kind of moving through those concepts for just to sustain us. It's hard right now for many of us, especially Black folks during this time. We're dealing with racism, we're dealing with medical racism, we're dealing with, and these are things we've always been dealing with, but they're just really highlighted.
I mean,
Highlighted.
it's been really difficult. I feel like a lot of people have reached their breaking point, and depending on where you already were with your baseline stress, some people reach their breaking point very early.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by now, it's like everybody's done. It's just been too long. And I see in myself it showing up as like no amount of self care or medication will make me feel okay because things are not okay. And just forgetting things and just feeling like I say I'm going to do something, and then I look up and it's been 10 days since somebody emailed me. It just keeps on happening. It's just like, oh boy, how long is this going to last? And what do you do when life essentially breaks you open?
Right.
And what will that look like as you try and put the pieces back together? I mean, it's a time of creativity, and I'm seeing a lot of people have breakthroughs and grow spiritually at a rate that couldn't happen in any other environment,
Absolutely.
but it's gnarly.
Absolutely. You know, the first month, I think it was around March, I was shocked because again, I had been meeting with people in person, and then when it hit around April, May, I was like, oh, we in trouble. Uh, we need to be together and we need to be in our bodies. Like this actually ain't the time to get disembodied.
Mm.
So that is definitely a trauma response that most of us do. Because if we're going to survive this and stay in this, we're going to have to be in our bodies. And I also understand that for many people, disassociation and being disembodied is absolutely a survival strategy. And it's one that I respect. But I took it upon myself during the month of May I did the class every Saturday.
Mm.
It's every Saturday for community. It was just like, and donation based so that we could just be able to, for 90 minutes, less smile and laugh and joy. Do the Jolly Hop. That's one of my, the dances that I have us do. And, do a self-protection move and just all these ways of practicing, again, concepts that are easy to like forget how to do and to be disconnected from when you're in such dire straits. And so if I can practice something that's called protection, it's actually called I Got Me. That's the name of the move.
Mm.
And to practice I Got Me, you know what I mean? Even for 90 minutes, people have said to me, yo, it helped me get through the week. And I'm like, so I want you to do it even when you're not with me. So
Yeah.
that's the next phase of this work, is me really being able to provide videos and stuff to people so that they can have, my voice and motivation, but so that they can, again, like people practice Tai Chi and yoga, so they can really have a practice that is theirs and they don't need the facilitator. They can really just be with this practice themselves.
Oh, that's a beautiful offering.
Thank you.
So the retreat is going to be a 1-day event,
Yes.
but then the community offering and, having that library, that's going to be something that you roll out later on this year.
Yes, that's something I'm working on. My uncle is a music producer, so we're working on making sure that I'm not messing up any copyrights and that I have original music. But yeah, I'll have videos, and class will still happen online, first and third Saturdays. Um, and but producing those videos so that people can be learning and practicing and stuff on their own, so that they don't have to be in class on Saturday. It could be Tuesday night and they're just tapping into, the Jolly Hop, or whatever they need from the library kind of movements.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Because I do know that community is the antidote to a lot of our problems.
Oh yeah.
And it's been more of a stressor now because people don't have the same type of access to community as they did before. It's
Right.
all a little different.
Right. That's the other thing that I want to mention too. We were talking a little bit about Black Healing October, and that is an event that is being put on by Reclaim Ugly. And my dear friend Vanessa Rochelle Lewis, who is the kind of steward of that. And that's also, I think, the brain kind of thinking behind the way that that's being done during the month of October. So that's going to be just a month of healing workshops of all different kinds. I'm going to do my class during that month. I think you said you're going to be doing some
Yes.
work.
Yes,
Or,
I'm going to be doing one centered on using nutrition to tune into your body's cues,
yes. Oh,
trusting your body wisdom, getting beyond fat phobia, which I really feel like is some colonial nonsense we don't
absolutely.
need.
Same. You already know, same. So yeah, so that event too, I think it's a similar, it's the community piece, that I think Reclaim Ugly is doing a really, really good job of. And, my group on Facebook, it's about 430 people in it. So it's still really small. And that's over the last 4 years, because it's really been very Bay Area based until recently. And
Oh,
so
that
now,
makes sense.
yeah, it's been, here in Berkeley, Women's Cancer Resource Center is where I've held class on the first and the third Saturday. But now, with the us being online, you know, there are a few people that attend from the East Coast, and you know, it's still donation based. I still don't charge for it so that it can be accessible in that way. And yeah, it's just
Where do you film it? Do you still go where you used to do your class?
I do it here in my room
Oh,
on
wow.
Zoom. Yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah. And I
There's so many barriers we let stop us from sharing what we have. So, was that even a thought for you, or you knew that what you had to share was too important to worry about, small details?
like sharing it online.
Well, like, oh, I need a studio. Oh, I need extra
Oh,
lights. Oh, I need,
I'm a organizer. You know, I was trained to be an organizer back in North Carolina in my 20s, and so something I think that it taught me is community. So I've not taught in a studio. I have only ever
Mm.
taught at nonprofit organizations. So Wardrobe for Opportunity in Oakland was allowing me to use their training space, and I would teach there. And I would split the donations with them. And then Women's Cancer Resource Center, I got a partnership with them from another project, and they were just like, we don't charge people for our workshops. They just are open to the community. So they made it sustainable for me, but free to the community. So anybody could come as long as also the people that come to Women's Cancer Resource Center can come. So it was a partnership with Women's Cancer Resource Center over the last 2.5 years. So I've not taught in a studio. So that is actually a new piece of the work that I'm going to be doing, is getting a certification, like a dance certification, so that when the time comes, I can teach in studios. But I've only ever taught at nonprofits.
Oh, that's so cool. That's
Yeah.
so that's really finding your own way
Yep. Yep.
and not waiting for someone to tell you how to do everything.
Yeah. And I have insurance, you know, and all of that, like, you know, taking care, making sure that I'm safe, but that again, that it's accessible, and that it is about community. That it's not, yeah. Cause I try not to talk about what it's not, and really just try to talk about, like, you know, the community aspect of it, you know, that some of the same people come, you know, to the class. And I've even had sisters tell me, you know, 40 something year old Black women who are like, I don't invite people because they ain't gonna get it. You know, they're gonna come in and they're not gonna get that we're not just dancing, that we're doing something sacred. And
Mm,
that means something to me, I'm very happy to know that that's coming across, because I think that sometimes depth feels hard. And I'm like, this is something that's deep, but the deep part is the fun. Like, you know, we're doing it so we can have fun, and so we can get in the practice of having fun. And if movement has always been triggering because of your size, or inaccessible because of your abilities, you know, or weird and culturally appropriative because of your race, then movement's hard for you. And so really restoring, like, nah, this is fun, you know, you get to be in a joy place when it comes to moving and sweating, for
right.
real, and not really selling the kind of sweaty piece.
Right. And I'm guessing from how you describe it that there's no wrong way to do the moves. There's no
Wow.
wrong way to dance.
It's so funny. We'll be doing a line dance, and I'll say, hey, remember the rule is just face the same way as everybody else. Like that's the rule, you know, especially, you know, for folks that are seated, or that are in a mobility device, you know, it's like, I tell them, you're always doing it right because you always face the right way, you know, just really encouraging people to, let's not take our bodies too serious. And at the same time, let's honor them, you know, and that's how you get to that juicy place of joy, really, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Because I know people put so much pressure on people to be Black in a certain way.
Come
And
on.
so if you can't dance by a certain standard, you might feel like that's another one of those areas where you're not Black enough because
Oh,
you can't dance.
I love dancing with folks that have that kind of, you know, belief, because again, in my space, I'm like, oh, I don't believe in those rules. I just don't. I was taught by an elder, a woman who teaches West African dance, named Queen Hollins, down in LA, and she says we dance like our tribe. You know, that you know, there's some people you can see their dance real close down to the ground. You know, they kind of got the deep moves. And then you'll see some people where they dance kind of high. And she's like, that's your tribe. That's your people coming through. So I tell anybody, you know, we don't do rhythm up in here. We do time. We stand in time with each other. And we honoring that our body moves like this. So it's probably connected to our ancestors, and we're honoring them, you know. So that's that. I'm not doing them black rules. You know, we ain't doing that up here.
That's fantastic. Where do people find your class? What's the website?
So I don't have a website. I just hired some help though, but I do have an Instagram and a Facebook group. So the Facebook group is Get Embodied Soul Dance Class. So you just look for Get Embodied. 9 out of 10 you'll find it, but Soul Dance Class. And then the Instagram is get.embodied.
Okay,
and,
perfect.
Yeah, you can find the class schedule, the retreat that I'm having on the 26th. The information will be on there. And then, you know, past videos on that Instagram, you can find videos of the class. You can see that there are people in wheelchairs, there are people using all kind of different mobility devices, sizes, shapes, races, you know, genders. We all in there dancing with each other, you know. So
I love it. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. If there was one thing you could snap your fingers and everyone listening would instantly understand, what would you offer them?
The real deep sovereignty that this body belongs to them. It's not a tool, but nothing other than to hold the life that's in it. That's what it's doing. That's what it's doing for you, and that's what it's doing with you. Y'all doing that in partnership. So yeah, I would want people to really have that. You know, this is a partnership. It's a really divine, beautiful one.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and it went all the places that I didn't think it would, and then right back to where I knew it would, and I'm just like, oh, it's so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, they might try to put you in a box. Tell them that you don't accept. When the world is tripping out, tell them that you love yourself. Hey, smile on them. Live your life just how you like it. It's your party. Negativity is not invited. For my queer folk, my trans, people of color, let your voice be heard. Look in the mirror and say that it's time to put me first. You were born to win. Head up high with confidence. This show is for everyone, so I thank you for tuning in. Let's go.